On is in America, Western culture, we're so focused on productivity and getting more and more and more done, and it's really out of balance. And actually, there was an article very recently about Lagon, Lagom, and it's about balance. It's a Swedish concept of balance, and if you Google that, it's a really good read, and it is something I've never heard of before. And it's all about trying to find the middle path. And it's just fascinating that it's such a Zen thing. Zen Buddhism is, and that's what Zen is an offshoot of. It's a type of Buddhism. Is all about the middle path, about avoiding extremes. And, well, that's what balance is. And that's what this Swedish culture concept of Lagom, I think I'm saying it right, or Lagom, is all about. And one way to help achieve that is to remember about the utility and the benefit of these margins. So at the beginning of the show, I mentioned something about, imagine somebody writing a book and the page was filled edge to edge, each page, with the text, top to bottom, edge to edge, no margins. And it would be annoying, and it would be frustrating, and it would create anxiety. If the every letter went right up to the edge, it would make you fear that something was bleeding over, and you'd constantly be turning over the page. Did it go over? You'd have nothing to hold on to on the sides, and a little bit of margin is actually a really nice thing. And if you've jammed your day full of tasks down to the minute, then you've created a whole bunch of anxiety because you've created opportunities for failure. You have no buffer, and you're bound to have just endless little failures here and there, and that creates anxiety and stress. And stress, your body can't tell the difference in stress between a lion chasing after you and words going all the way to the page, edge of the page, or being late for a dentist appointment because you didn't leave work early to create enough margin, and now there's a traffic jam, and now I'm ripping out my hair. I hate where I live, and what am I doing with my life? I just want to go run. So I've got some tips for you, along with a little bit more explanation. But a coworker of mine told me something that she was doing that I thought was so cool, because I create space every day, whenever I can, just a few minutes, where I sit down and I just kind of visualize what I'm supposed to be doing next. Before I started recording this, I visualized what I'm supposed to be doing next. I'll create a little list, and I'll put down the items, very relaxed. I use Dynalist, D-Y-N-A, Dynalist.io. And it's a super easy list creator. And just putting things down forces you to actually think things out a little bit. I'll just sit down, and one of my daily tasks is to plan out the day. And that's creating a little bit of buffer space there to stop and pause and think about what you're doing. And this coworker of mine said that she said something about that she'd been waiting out in the parking lot. was new at the time, and didn't have a key to the building. And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, we need to get on that, especially fast." And she said, "Oh, it's not that bad. I just sit out my car and wait anyway, a lot of times." And I said, "Really?" Instead of coming in, she goes, "Oh, I do that a lot for lots of places." This is what was so cool. She likes to get to places she's supposed to be early, and then with that extra amount of time, she just sits in her car. I'm scratching my chin right here because I'm just thinking, this is so brilliant. She sits in her car and just thinks. So she's created a few minutes of buffer, or more, maybe 10 minutes, and then she sits in there and thinks about what she's going to be doing next. And man, so you're creating shower thoughts. Where you're sitting in the shower, you're like, "Oh, I should do this. Oh, I should do that." Well, the reason you're doing that in the shower is because you got nothing else to do except for wash your hair. So you're just sitting there, and other thoughts come to your mind. So imagine getting places a little bit early, and then just sitting there and and waiting for ideas to come to your mind, and then you can write them down because you've got the time, which is huge. So a lot of what we're talking about today is margins as time, so that you have clarity and you're relaxed. And the whole thing where you visualize how the next big thing, the rest of your day is going to go, or that next big important thing, you visualize yourself doing it, and then you're like, okay, so I put on this, I'll visualize my run, I'm like, okay, and I'm going to go, oh crap, I haven't filled up my water bottles yet for my run. Oh, okay. And then I visualize myself going, oh, you know what, I don't know if I've charged my watch. Now, if I scheduled everything right up to the minute, then those two things I never would have thought of because I'm too busy, because I haven't cut the other things a little bit short so that I've got some margin. And I had been doing the thing where I try to get to swimming early, so I have a few minutes to sit in the car and I visualize my swim. And how my swim's going to go, and what is my purpose for this swim, so that I have a good swim. And her saying that she does this all the time, I was like, wow, that authorizes me that I'm on the right track, to do this for my swim. So I try to get to my swims early, and then I sit in the car for a few minutes with the lights off and just sit in there and just kind of think about how my swim's going to go. And that's creating a little bit of space, a little bit of margin. So this book came out very recently. I think it's called Margins, which is, doesn't get A++ for being super creative. But if you go to Amazon, which I'll do right here, I had it open, and sorry, hiccup, and you look at the book description, it's called Margin: Restoring Emotional, Physical, Financial, and Time Reserves to Overloaded Lives, right? And so you can get the idea. It just gives examples of why margins are good, why, what happens when we're missing them, why you want to look for them. But what I found interesting is when I started panning down the page, the book is only $12.71 for a paperback. There's an audio book. Cool. So I need to get that one. I've got an Audible account. But you look at the associated titles. If you get this book, here's some other recommended titles that you might be interested in. A Minute of Margin. Another one called Contentment. This is where I'm going to start going with this conversation here. Overload Syndrome. Learning to live within your limits. Humilitas, which I get the idea, but I don't know what that book's exactly about. 10-minute mindfulness, 23 anti-procrastination habits, declutter your mind, the power of positive energy, sacred rhythms. That's interesting because margins would be the down cycle of a rhythm, and then wrecked. And this book looks like just shattered. And from all that, you can get an idea of what's going on. People are feeling overloaded, they're doing too much, and there's no thinking space. I've done the thing where I've scheduled my entire day down to the minute, and you know what we miss? We miss that time of thinking, you've got no creativity time, and it makes you very unhappy. It makes you feel like a robot. So Kai and I, just a while ago, we decided to sit down and try to build a stand for my iPad out of Legos. And see, there's some creativity time, but I couldn't do that. That doesn't go on a on a calendar, on a scheduler, and how long that's going to take, or what pieces to use and all that. That's creative, and you wouldn't think of that without actually giving yourself some time to allow for it. So along with that, there's some things I've noticed since I started paying attention to margins and what happens when you give yourself more margins. It's really interesting. The first thing I noticed is it gives you time. If you try to do less, the art of doing less, right? There's a podcast called the Slow Home Podcast where they talk all about doing less and then the joy in life you get by doing a little bit less. JOMO, the joy of missing out. And I've noticed that if I'm not in such a rush, that I actually have time to do things right. That's really interesting, right? So it allows you to put the bow on things, but it's the bow on things in life that makes life enjoyable, you know? So I'm not in a rush to get out of the house. Well, guess what? I can clean up the kitchen counter a little bit more. I can put things in the trash. You know, I can swing by the recycling bin on the way out of the house and throw that extra recycling stuff out. And that makes you feel good, you know? I can put my my shirt that I got out but then never wore, I can hang it back up. And my socks that are out on the floor that I never wore or that are dirty, let's say that example, I've got the time to put them in the dirty clothes instead of being in a rush to get out the door. But to do so, I had to create a little bit of extra time and enjoy the margins. And it's weird, like doing those little extra things is kind of like playtime, kind of like building with the Legos, because it's not scripted, it's spontaneous. And you're doing it your way, you know, you're putting your touch on things. That's exactly like playing with a toy, you know, your way, the way that you want. And it's very fulfilling. And we're going to get to the word very enlightening here in a minute. And the other thing I noticed was that not only does it allow you to fix things, but there's some things that'll really pay off and make you feel good and make you feel more relaxed. And with a little bit of margin, I've noticed that in traffic, because I'm not in such a rush to get places, if somebody's fighting with me over to get in a lane, I don't care. They can have it because I'm not in a rush trying to get there. And I actually feel good. And it's bad to say this, but I feel like sorry for the other person. I'm like, man, dude, it sucks to be you. But I'm just bebopping down. Dude, you want to get all angry because I'm in the lane that you want to be in, and I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do about it. But you're all angry, and I'm not. I'm actually chill because I'm right where I need to be, and I'm happy, and I'm content. So your frustration doesn't wear off on me because I'm not on the edge. So I can stop that frustration where it's at. And my note here says that one thing I noticed was I'm able to actually put on my blinker way ahead of time and easily change lanes because I've got the time. And when somebody is trying not to let me in, I don't care because I'll either just get in anyway or I'll wait till the next car. It doesn't matter. And then that's a really weird feeling that it makes you feel like you're flow in the zone, kind of like a runner's high. To have that extra space, you feel all relaxed, and everything's relative. You feel more relaxed than those around you, so it gives you this feeling of bliss. It's really weird. And the other thing I noticed is because you've got that little bit of extra time, it gives you the time to actually talk to people about stuff. So our gym was just sold to a bigger company, and they're remodeling this and that and the other, and it's, you know, they're changing out this locker room, and they're removing this track, and they're putting in this, and they're moving all this weight equipment around, and there's a billboard up in the front office now showing all the designs, the floor plans, and all this stuff. And normal Brett, if I was in a rush, I would look at it. I don't have time to look at that, you know, and get down to my swim. But because I've got an extra minute or two here and there, I stop and I go, oh, huh. So what's going on here, right? Because I'm not in a rush. Because now I can ask people what's going on, and the girl behind the counter is like, oh yeah, so and we're gonna do this, that, and the other. And I said, oh, well, what about this over here? And she goes, oh, well, here. And she came around the counter and started talking to me. And this is a girl that I see like every morning that I go swim. And I hand her my car key. She hands me a key to the locker. That's the system they use. And after you check in with a little beeper thing. And I don't know her, even though I see her all the time. We've never had a real conversation. And now we're actually having a real conversation. And because now she knows who I am, she has a vested interest in me. And now because I've taken time to look at, I've got the time to take the time to look at what's going on with the gym floor plan, I'm like way more in the know. And I said, oh, okay, so what about this? And she goes, oh, are you interested in you need to know about that? And I go, yeah, can you let me know? And then, a week later, because we've actually had a real conversation now, because we had the time, then she told me about whatever it was. And I just noticed that, wow, when you make the time, you actually now have the time to talk to people, and the benefit, the payoff from those very short conversations, just being a little bit longer. You find out things are coming. Don't do this. Expect that. Oh, this little tip here. Hey, I'll keep on top of this for you. Oh, are you interested in this? Right? Everything is just so much better because you've actually made the time to talk to somebody because you've got the time. And then another thing is the extra time, and it kind of has to do with the blinker thing and the changing lanes, but it has to do with so much more than that. Holding doors open for people, giving somebody else your leftovers or something like that. You feel so much lighter and effortless that you are able to be way more generous with material goods and your time. And that feels good. They say the only thing that feels better than getting a present is giving a present. And that's so true, right? Well, now you've got the time to help others and give to others. And then that lifts up your mood and your bliss all day long as well. And the crazy thing is, I'm saying the word lift and bliss, and you feel lighter and easier. Well, those are all part of the root word of enlightenment. There's two versions of enlightenment that people will try to get to, and one is the light switch, and that means you can be in a dark room, and enlightenment is where you suddenly realize stuff. So you're in darkness, you don't know how this one situation works, or your place in life, or this whatever, anything that's going on, how this race is organized. What is the point of all this? What's the point of my job? Just something doesn't make sense. It's like being in a dark room, and then a moment of enlightenment is where you suddenly get it, and you go, oh, follow the money, for like this one thing, or like, oh, my boss is a total jerk and he gets off on this, now everything makes sense, right? So when everything suddenly makes sense, that's like flipping on a light switch, and the things being lit up is the enlightenment, and then now you have clarity, right? Well, that's one version of it. Now, another version is also when you let go of things weigh you down, and you let go of things, you constantly feel lighter and lighter and lighter. And this margins, it's not a theory, it's definitely a real thing. This margins effort, this margins concept, margins method, like I said, it makes you feel really relaxed and floaty, and like you have less cares in the world, and things don't bother you much at all. And when people are like, oh, he's so zen or she's so zen, that's what they're talking about, is that things don't bother you. And you're like, okay, well, that's just the way things are, because you've got the time to deal with them and things don't stress you out. And I honestly think that that, along with the light switch concept, the two of those together is the lightness and enlightenment. And I already talked about the Swedish Lagon lifestyle, and that's part of your way to get to margins. And the definition of Lagon is a Swedish word meaning just the right amount. The Lexon Swedish English Dictionary defines Lagon as enough, sufficient, adequate, just right. Lagon is also widely translated as in moderation. God, that's so zen. In balance, perfect, simple. Oh my gosh, perfect dash simple, and suitable in matter of amounts. All right, so that's our little talk on margins. Check out the book. It's an audio book you can listen to while you're out on a bike ride or a jog or something like that, and start practicing it to a little bit of balance.